Hey everyone, welcome to the stream. It is time to record my weekly show, The Break, and I'm doing that while streaming live. So welcome if you're watching this live, and by all means, join the comments, join the chat. And if you're watching this later on, then equally welcome. I hope you enjoy the show. Let me put on my headphones so I actually hear what you are hearing. I hope the video is good. I'm recording this at a very weird moment of the week. It's Sunday right now. It's 2 o'clock, so it's right after lunch. So it's one of the worst times actually to go live because I know that most of the US is still asleep or just barely waking up. In Europe, everybody is just enjoying Sunday, and over in Asia and in Australia, New Zealand, they're probably already getting ready for bed, or maybe they are already asleep. So, you know what? That's just the way it is. I didn't have time to record this particular episode of my podcast, The Break, earlier this week because I fell a little bit behind at the end of the year, of the last year. So I recorded a new New Year's episode, I think on Monday. And so this particular podcast that I'm about to record is formally going to be the first episode of the new year. So this is week one. Every week I produce 2 podcasts, The Walk, which is more about personal development, faith, all sorts of more personal things. The second podcast is this one where I talk about my passions, about movies, books, TV shows, video games, cooking, and all that. So this is why I want to record this on Sunday to wrap up that first week, and then hopefully in the next couple of weeks, what I want to do is to go live at a very specific moment of the week, where every week it will be the same day and the same time. So I'm currently thinking about Wednesday. That's in the middle of the week, so it gives me time to also prepare and get the show online to my listeners before the weekend starts. And it's just like the perfect day, I think, for a break. It's literally a break in the middle of the week. So that kind of fits the title of the show. And then what I also want to try to do this year is to, because it's always going to be on the same day at the same time, to steer people to that live show. So to get more people in the community while I'm having this discussion with them. So the show becomes more of also like a community meetup. And this is something that I used to do years ago when I was still working for SQPN. We did have a show that was called Catholic Weekend, and that would always be recorded on a Saturday afternoon, at least my time. So I think it would be around, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my time. So that would be 9 o'clock a.m. in the US. And the community just gathered, both the listeners and various podcasters, and it was always a lot of fun. And I kind of miss that. And I think it's a different experience to watch a show live and to be able to chat with the rest of the community, other than just listening back to it. Of course, you can still do that as a podcast, but it's I think my work would benefit more from the live interaction. And not to mention that it helps to have people that are doing like body doubling for me. Since I have ADHD, it really helps if people are watching me live, so I have more energy to do the show. So thank you for being there. Hey, Sandrine, good to see you. Happy New Year to you too. I assume that more people will join me as I record because people are watching on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitch. So let's get this show off the ground. Here we go.
Do you need a break?
You read my mind.
Come with me.
Hello and welcome to episode number 1 of 2024 of my podcast, The Break. I'm Father Roderick. I'm a priest and I'm a geek. I love to share with you my passion for storytelling, for TV shows, movies, video games, books, and so much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'm so excited to start another year of podcasting for you. As you know, every week I do 2 podcasts, The Walk and The Break. And in addition to that, every once in a while, I will record a very different type of podcast, which is called The Catholic Insider. Last year, when I went to Rome, I recorded a whole series, and I've been bringing that in preview to my patrons. So I've got several tiers for my patron community. And so for the people that support me on the $10 per month level, I wanted to give them first access to these Rome recordings. It's a lot of fun. It feels like going back in time. This is how I started my podcasting journey. And now, 15 years later, I'm back at doing the same type of recording, bringing people with me on an adventure to discover this wonderful world that we live in. So later on, I'm going to also publish those episodes in a public form. Still working on that. And so to be able to have these 3 main shows this next year, and to be able to cater to the different communities that I try to serve, it's a lot of fun. And there are a few more things that I would like to share with you before I start talking about the movies and the books that I'm excited about, because this concerns every one of you. As you know, the beginning of the year for all of us is a moment where you kind of rethink what you're doing, and sometimes you have these new plans, new projects. And one of the things that I've been preparing for months now is the rollout of a different approach to the work that I do, to my mission. You know that as a priest, I work full-time in the media, and I've been doing this for almost as long as I've been ordained a priest. It started way back when I was still like the main pastor of a parish. And in my spare time, I started to build a Star Wars website. This was around the time that the prequels were being filmed and produced. And I started to blog about Star Wars, and then making the links with the deeper themes in Star Wars and the religious themes, etc. That was what gave me all of a sudden the awareness that if I used the internet to reach out, all of a sudden my parish would be the entire world, and I was able to reach tens of thousands of fellow Star Wars fans all over the world. That was where I learned the power of the internet. And then I went, of course, as you know, to Rome 5 years after I was ordained. I studied social communications, and that widened my horizon even more. I became even more convinced that for me, my particular vocation was to use these social media, to work as a priest, to help people on their journey in life and in faith. And so when I got back from Rome, that's when the whole podcasting revolution started. I started to use podcasting, and that became my main work for many, many years. And then when online video started to take flight, and at the same time I was asked to work in Dutch television, that is how I started to expand in video. So with all that, I've never had a single cent of the bishops or the Vatican or whoever to finance that work. So I was always paying for the work that I do for you in podcasting, online, YouTube, TikTok. I was financing that through my work in the parish, and then later on through my work in television. So the broadcasting job that I had for TV, the money that I made for that, I put that in a foundation, and the foundation was able to finance the work that I do. But I don't have that television job anymore. And so for this next year, or this upcoming year, I was thinking, how can I make this work in the long run? Because I know that I have to somehow, I want to continue this. I think it's super important work, but I need to find new streams of income. And the biggest struck of lightning that I had last year is, well, why don't I help other people as a coach to do what I've done over all these years? I've accumulated so much knowledge, practical knowledge. I've tried out so much stuff. I failed at some stuff. I was very successful in other areas. I can use that knowledge to train, to help, and to coach institutions, dioceses, parishes, or individual people in their efforts to reach out and to be better at communicating using social media, using TikTok, YouTube, you name it. I've worked in all these different fields. And so over the past few weeks, I've been starting to think that through. What would that mean for the kind of work that I do? How does it relate to the work that I do for you right now, recording this podcast? Of course, in this podcast, I'm not going to bother you with like social communications lessons. You're not listening to this show for that. But I do know that at least part of my audience could be interested also in that social media coaching that I'm going to offer. And that would be a business in a certain way. That I really want to do that in a professional way. I am a professional. So it also means that that could create a new income stream that will allow me to also be there for you and to continue to be there for you for years to come. And so what I hope is that over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to take my time to really build this up carefully, step by step. I'm currently reading a lot of books about coaching and also the business side and the marketing side. This is all stuff that, it's not my bread and butter. It's never been my bread and butter, but I want to learn. And I'm already getting so many ideas from especially studying marketing and copywriting and email marketing. And some of that is also benefiting you right now. I know that a lot of you have joined my Patreon community recently, and I'm not just talking about the people that are supporting me financially through Patreon, but also a lot of you that have signed up for the free Patreon community. So when you go to my Patreon page over at patreon.com/Father Roderick, you can join the community for free. If you want to support me, you can also pick a tier, and then you pay like $2.50 a month or $5 a month or 10 or more if you're a millionaire, sure, everything helps. But what I've learned from studying these, this kind of more like marketing related type of communication, the best idea that I got was you need to reach out to people almost on a daily basis, but not like selling something, but entertaining them, telling them a story, giving them a bit of value. And then, of course, I also want to pitch something. And when I communicate about, communication, then, of course, I would like to reach out and help people to learn about communication and maybe ultimately also become a coaching client. But for you, as part of my primary audience, because make no mistake, this is my primary mission, to do exactly this, to create podcasts and to make videos online about, building a bridge between the culture of faith and tradition and on the other side, today's culture, today's storytelling. So in order to enhance this primary mission, I also would like to engage with my followers on a daily basis. And so that's what I've been doing. If you have joined my Patreon community, you've noticed that for this first week of the new year, I've been sending you a short story every day. And it's always a story that is very close to the stuff that I talk about here on the podcast. So it's always related to a movie that I just watched. It could be a review. It could be like a thought that I had while playing a video game or reading a book or something like that. And what I try to do is also to keep it within, the general, like what most people know of. Obviously, every once in a while, I might talk about something more fringe. But if I would just focus on anime, for a lot of you, that would be like, I am not interested in that. So I'm sticking with, Star Wars, Star Trek, and Lord of the Rings and that sort of stuff. But what I do is, so I write a short story, and I do this knowing very well that I've never done this before. I don't know how this is going to work out. But I do know that by sitting down every day and creating a short story, I'm learning to become a better storyteller. I'm learning how to keep you engaged. I know how to do this with a podcast. I do know how to do it with a homily in church. I also have learned how to do this for TV. But when it comes to writing, that for me is uncharted territory. But I want to learn. And I know that this is going to be extremely powerful in forging a stronger bond with you. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, well, you know what? I'd like to read these stories every day. And obviously, I'm also posting this stuff on a website and on my social media. But because of these algorithms, and not everybody is always, browsing social media, you tend to miss a lot of that content. If you want to get this short email every day with a short story, you can throw it away if you want. I mean, you don't have to read it every day. But if you want to have that daily contact, and I promise I won't overstay my welcome. I want to make every email really fun to read. It's first and foremost, it's entertainment. Then what I would like, and entertainment plus inspiration, of course. It's more than just entertainment. I also want to communicate something that helps you in your life, but it's for you that I do this. Then take a look at my Patreon page. Join that free community, and then from that moment on, you will get those emails. And you can also, if it's too much, you can temporarily halt the emails. You can say, I only want to have these types of emails. So no worries. I will not sell your email address to anyone. It's perfectly safe. But I would really like to learn to tell these stories. I personally have a lot of fun writing it. For me, it's the best content that I put in that email newsletter, and I want to share it with you. So if you like this podcast, you like the stuff that I talk about here, and you would like to have that daily story that I write for you, then sign up for my Patreon community. It doesn't cost you anything. And I would love to have that daily contact. And of course, I welcome your feedback. I'd love to hear what you think of it. And then over time, we will start to develop a new website because, this is still on Patreon. But ultimately, in the end, I want to move this to a website that I fully own, where I can even be more specific in bringing you exactly the type of content that you need and that you want to receive. But for now, Patreon does a pretty good job. So take a look.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
All right, it's time to talk about Star Wars, and there was some very exciting Star Wars news at the beginning of this new year, and it came from none other than Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. I hope that's how you pronounce her name, and you may wonder, say that again, Sharmeen who? Well, she is a lauded producer, director, movie maker, documentary maker. And she has been picked by Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm to helm the new Star Wars movie that will continue the story of Rey Skywalker, as we can now call her. I'd rather call her Rey Skywalker than Rey Palpatine. But her story is going to continue, and I'm over the moon about that because I felt that her story deserves that. And there is so much that the sequel movie set up that I think is perfect material for future Star Wars stories. And that's exactly what Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is going to give us. So she's going to be directing this movie that will show us how Rey, 15 years after the final events in the Rise of Skywalker, how she is trying to use what she has learned from Luke Skywalker, what she has gathered from the books that he gave her, these old ancient books containing all the knowledge of the tradition of the Jedi, to build up a new Jedi Academy, to form a new generation of Jedi. That whole concept to me is so incredibly cool. And then, of course, to get a story, it needs to have tension. There needs to be problems. It will be hard to build that new academy because the world, of course, obviously has changed. The universe, the galaxy is not the same anymore. And we know that when the world changes, what worked in the past for Jedi may not work for future Jedi because, There's a new generation. The situation is different. New problems in the world. And this is why I'm so excited that they picked Charmine Orbait-Chinois, I really hope I pronounced this well, as the director. Because if you look at the kind of work that she's done, of course, she has been the director of the first Miss Marvel movie, which I thought was decent. It wasn't my favorite Marvel movie, but I liked it quite a bit. But what I am much more impressed with is her work in documentary making. So she's born and raised in Pakistan. And she was actually, even though she's from a Muslim family and from a Muslim tradition, she went to a Catholic school. So she has had, especially in her childhood, in teenage years, she was formed at a Catholic institution. And then she started her work mostly in reporting about wars, about injustice, about the very difficult situation in which women in her country and in that area of the world had to deal with oppression, with being deprived of education, but also the abuse that women suffer during wars, during all these tense situations that the world has today. And her work as a documentary maker was to show the plight of these women and also their strength. So years and years ago, when she was interviewed about one of her documentaries, she said, you know what? I made this documentary or I made this movie because I want men to feel uncomfortable when they watch this. Now, this past week, she was asked in an interview totally unrelated to that work, what she thought about, this upcoming Star Wars movie that she's going to direct. And then she said, among other things in that interview, you know what? It is 2024. I think it's about time that we had a woman come forward to shape a story in the galaxy far, far away. She said a lot of other things as well, how excited she was, how much the world needs hero stories, etc. But a part of the very toxic, politicized Star Wars community, I hesitate calling it the fandom, because I wonder if these people are really fans or if they just want to constantly use Star Wars as an excuse to rant about the things they find important. But there was a whole kerfuffle on the internet about that particular quote, when people immediately, and I saw this also in reactions to my posts on social media, like, oh, you see, this is Disney again, it's all about, it's going to be feminist, it's all going to be super politicized, and they basically just projected this entire culture war that I think is causing so much. So it's at the root of so much negativity, and is also, I don't know, just creating so much discord, I think, nowadays, especially online. They projected all that on that one quote. And then they found that old interview and they said, see, exactly this particular director she wants that man will hate Star Wars. So it's terrible, and Kathleen Kennedy should be fired. And you know what? The whole thing that they've been doing for years now. When I read that, I was like, oh, here we go again. Let's go back to that interview that they're quoting, and let's see the whole quote in context. When you see what she actually was talking about was that she, in her documentaries, in her movies, she was trying to show the world what men are doing to women, I can't even mention it here on the show. I want the show to be family friendly, but you know what happens to women during wars, in some Arab countries, in parts of Africa. You know how much women still have to fight to receive education, to be respected, to not be mistreated and oppressed. That is what she was talking about, and the men that she wanted to be uncomfortable with her work were the men that were abusing women. That's what she was talking about. And I'm thinking, you know what? That is something that could, I think, make Star Wars, this upcoming Star Wars movie, actually very relevant. I want Star Wars to talk about how people can find their strength, how we need to respect one another. Isn't Star Wars all about that? It's this empire that is abusing people, that is, let's be honest, very much a male-dominated force in the Star Wars galaxy. And even the few women that make a career in the empire, they basically are forced to behave like men. Look at the characters in Andor. You know, these few female Imperial officers, they are basically, they can't really be women in a certain way. They have to be even more ruthless than their male competitors. And so I think there's a lot of material there that could function also as a mirror for us. You know, how do we treat women, and do we really see this charism that women have? But there's also, obviously, there is a part of our population that doesn't want to hear about that. They are allergic to anything that even comes close to topics like this. Whereas I'm thinking, you know what? If you look at the world's population, it's 50-50. And so shouldn't our movies, shouldn't our stories reflect this? And isn't it time in that respect? I totally agree with Charmine that it is time for women to come forward. Now, of course, there have been female directors, especially for the TV series, and they did a fantastic job. Look at Obi-Wan Kenobi. That entire miniseries was directed by a woman, but a lot of the writing is done still by man. And so I think what she means is, well, you know, I want to tell a really, you know, female story here. And why would that be a problem for Star Wars? Why would that not work? Why would that immediately result in the end of Star Wars? I just don't believe it. Actually, I'm welcoming this. I'm curious. I'm intrigued. And when you read the entire interview that she gave, you see that she has a passion for Star Wars. She loves Star Wars. I'm thinking, you know, what can go wrong? Why don't people give her the benefit of the doubt? That's the minimum thing that you can do. Why don't you just wait and see before you immediately start another culture war, as if the world doesn't have enough of these culture wars anymore. Anyway, I had to get this off my chest and to communicate to you that I, as a longtime Star Wars fan, I'm super excited about what I read about this new movie. And I am very curious to see where she's going to take the story. And I hope this actually joins what I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. I think for Star Wars to continue to be successful, it has to change with the times. It has to change in the way with the changes that we see in our culture. And I would love it if Star Wars would welcome new writers, new people from different areas of the creative sphere, and not just always rely on Dave Filoni. Because then you can get myopic at one point. Star Wars can become like, oh, it's always the same. It's a little bit the problem of the Marvel Universe, the MCU. It's like the same type of story over and over and over again. I think Star Wars, at when it started, was revolutionary. George Lucas was a very creative writer who went against a lot of the conventions. I think that Star Wars thrives when you have that unexpected, like, creative tension, like what's going to happen next. And this is why I loved The Last Jedi. It was so different from what everybody expected. And a lot of people were upset about that. And I was like, no, I love this. Like, please continue to surprise me. That is what keeps me engaged as a Star Wars fan. Enough about this. Let's move on to outer space, but in a different direction. Let's go where no man has gone before.
Space. The final frontier.
Yeah, we need to talk about Star Trek as well. That's my other passion. I've been a lifelong Star Wars fan, but I've also been a lifelong Trekkie. And this goes back to the time that I was a little toddler and I was staying with my grandparents in the south of the country, and we were able to watch the original Star Trek on German television in black and white. And I only have like vague memories of watching that on TV, but I'd never seen something like that. This was long before Star Wars. but it had a spaceship, it had aliens. I'd never seen something like that, and probably we shouldn't have been watching that stuff because we were way too young. But ever since those early days of my childhood, I've been a Star Trek fan. And I love that we're currently, again, in a golden age of Star Trek production. I love what they did with Lower Decks, with Strange New Worlds, even with the movies to a certain extent. I really enjoyed every single bit of it. And there is this one television show that actually was the first new TV show that heralded this revival of the Star Trek franchise, and that was Star Trek Discovery. I really enjoyed that first season. And then bit by bit over time, I started to feel a little bit more uncomfortable with where this series was going, because I felt that, what I just said about Star Wars, and the whole political aspects of Star Wars, that has also always been part of Star Trek, even more so perhaps than Star Wars. But I felt like the storytelling started to suffer under the weight of all the kind of virtue signaling. It's like, okay, we need to talk about this because it's like we need to put this on the agenda, and I felt that it was done in a very forced way, where it got in the way, I think, of good storytelling. And anyway, that's just my personal opinion. But I wasn't surprised that actually Star Trek Discovery started to have declining viewership, and then ultimately when the whole reshuffle of the franchise started to happen, and you got all these mergers for the online streaming stuff, and Star Trek started to splinter into various series, and one series you had to go to Amazon Prime, and the other one was on Netflix, and some stuff is on, what is it, Sky Showtime over here in Europe, and Paramount Plus, and it's now all over the place. There's not one single destination like we have for Star Wars and Marvel. Star Trek is everywhere and nowhere. Discovery got lost in the shuffle. It's like currently, right now, here in the Netherlands, there is no legal way to watch Star Trek Discovery, at least in my country. It's not available on any of the streaming platforms, not even on the platform where Paramount is one of the stakeholders, Sky Showtime. It's not there. We do have Lower Decks, but it's not on Sky Showtime. It's on Prime. It's on Amazon Prime. And so I've not been able to catch up with season 4, I think, of Star Trek Discovery. I've watched the first 3 seasons, and even though I have my criticism of Star Trek Discovery, I did really like the crew. I think the team it just works. The chemistry works. I like all the characters. And so I really want to see where this story is going. And especially now that we know that this upcoming season is going to be the last season, season 5, that starts in April, I hope that at that time it will have a new home here in Europe, because I want to see the end. I want to see how they wrap up the story, and I think it's good that they stop now. I think 5 seasons is actually quite a decent run. It's kind of similar to what they did with Enterprise, where also they decided to end the series. That final season was the weakest of the bunch, in my opinion. I think that for Discovery, they're going to be doing a better job, because the writing is a lot better than it was for Enterprise, especially when it comes to that 4th season. The budget is a lot larger. Of course, the show looks amazing. But I want to have a good send-off of these characters, and also for the benefit of the actors and everybody who has been involved in Star Trek Discovery, has been passionate about that project. I want that creativity to be validated. And so as a Star Trek fan, I hope that we get to see this. And if not, we'll just have to wait for these series to come to DVD or Blu-ray, or, well, DVD probably not, but definitely Blu-ray. And this is something I want to talk about also in the next section, which is about fantasy and about 4K movies.
The most beloved fantasy story of all time. It is the tale of a small hobbit and the great wizard who appeared to him one day.
All right, dude, check it out. Go like that way, and then up this one mountain, and then kill all the hippies you come across.
No, I'm searching for a dragon's treasure.
I'm the wizard, you're the dwarf, and you will respect my authority!
I am no dwarf.
So for some reason, I always associate this time of year, so around Christmas, New Year's Eve, and the first weeks of January, I always associate that with The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. And when I do a rewatch of those movies, I usually do it around this time. I hope to do it between Christmas and New Year, but it got a little bit busy, so I just didn't find the time. But then, just the other day, I saw I got a notification that the 4K remasters of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, both the theatrical release and the extended versions, and the Hobbit trilogy, were heavily discounted on Amazon and also on a Dutch commerce website. So basically, Amazon matched the price. And I was on the fence. I was like, okay, I already own this movie now, or these two trilogies on. Well, I do have the DVDs, the special edition DVDs for the original Lord of the Rings. I rebought the whole thing when it came out on Blu-ray because, of course, the image quality was a lot better, and it did still have all the special extras, which is one of the reasons that I hold on to those discs, because that's not what you get on these streaming platforms. You can see the movie, but it doesn't come with the director's commentary and all the behind-the-scenes stuff. That, for me, is just as important in enjoying what Peter Jackson did as the movies themselves. And so I already owned this on Blu-ray. I also bought the box when it came out, like the collection box for the Hobbit. And I got the box that also has the 3D version. Unfortunately, they never did a 3D remaster of The Lord of the Rings. Maybe in the future that will happen. But I knew that I wanted to have the 3D version of The Hobbit because I love that experience in the theater so much. And so I got the box, and the 3D. The 3D version is quite bare bones, but it also has the original Blu-ray version, and it looks super crisp and actually it still looks very good on my big screen TV. That's not the case for the Blu-ray version of The Lord of the Rings. That particular trilogy looks a bit blurry on a big screen TV. Even though, my TV does upscale it to 4K, but it's blurry and it's uneven. You clearly see all the flaws in the special effects. And the one thing that shows the age of that transfer is the color grading. So when color grading is the process where you take what has been filmed and then you tweak the colors. So that scenes, for instance, that were filmed under different circumstances, like there may have been more yellow light, or for instance, when they're filming a scene, the hobbits are out there walking outside, and it's been filmed in real life somewhere out there in New Zealand. Well, maybe in one scene, there's a bit of an overcast, and so the light becomes kind of bluish. And then they film another part of that scene a bit later during the day when the sun is already starting to go down. And the more the sun sets, the more yellow the color becomes, right? So even though later on you want to have these scenes together in one dialogue, for instance, you can tell that they were filmed at different times of the day. And so what you do in color grading is you tweak the color so that it looks more or less the same. The problem was at the time that this was a chemical process. They didn't have access to digital color grading because computers couldn't handle that kind of data. And so Peter Jackson, when he had to do the color grading for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it was a very laborious manual process. And they had to use a lot of tricks to make all that footage that they shot over the course of, 3 years that they'd been filming this trilogy. To make it all match, they had to use a lot of tricks that nowadays don't look convincing anymore. And there were scenes that were really, I remember, where the skin color, for instance, was totally off, and people had like orange faces, or there was this, especially on the Blu-rays, this green hue over everything, and it just looked unappealing, not very good. So what Peter Jackson did when they wanted to bring out the 4K remaster of these two trilogies, he wanted the Lord of the Rings movies to look as good as the Hobbit movies, which of course is almost impossible because the Hobbit movies were filmed with the latest cameras and super high resolution. You remember the high frame rate also that they were experimenting with. And so there's just much more data in that original footage. But he went back, and now that the movie has been digitized in like super high resolution and they have access to all these color grading tools, he did sit down for weeks and weeks and weeks to work with a professional color grader to make sure that the movies of the Lord of the Rings look the way he intended them to look, but you couldn't do it because of the lack of technology at the time. And so this is the ultimate version of the Lord of the Rings movies. And another thing that Peter Jackson explains is while they were doing the color grading, he noticed that if you look at the footage in 4K, you see all the flaws. And you notice that it's a bit wonky, and so they went back and they cleaned up a lot of the special effects. They didn't refilm it, as far as I know. They didn't like completely redo stuff like George Lucas did with the special editions of the original trilogy. But they did clean up a lot of the flaws that you see in what was shot originally, so that the special effects hold up much better. So knowing this, I decided, okay, I need to go for this. These movies are usually very expensive in 4K. The Blu-ray market is not a very big market because a lot of people think, well, you know what? I can just stream these for free. Why should I buy these physical media? And a lot of people don't even have players anymore. But what I just shared with you about, Star Trek Discovery, that is also a problem when it comes to basically anything that I love. You are never certain that if you are now able to watch something on a streaming platform, that next year it will still be there. There are a lot of movies that I sold from my old DVD collection thinking, I can watch it on Netflix. Because back then, when Netflix was the only streaming platform, they did have everything. Nowadays, there are movies disappearing here and there almost every day. And there are a lot of movies that I still had on my to-watch list, and now when I go to Netflix, they've disappeared because the rights have been sold to another streaming platform that I don't have access to. And so I realize now that it's really important to at least have physical copies of the movies that are important to me. And so last year I bought the Back to the Future trilogy in 4K because that movie trilogy defines my time in seminary. Those movies came out when I was studying to become a priest. They have been very important to me and still are. I wanted to have a physical copy of those movies, and then the best quality that is available right now. So I got that. Then I had 4K versions of what else? Some of the Star Wars movies. I had them in 4K as well. Even though I have to say that on Disney Plus, the streaming quality is very good right now. You don't know if in the future this might degrade, just like with Netflix. In the beginning, those movies looked a lot better than now because they're using much less bandwidth to stream their movies, also to economize. This is also one of the issues that I have with streaming The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, because for a stream to be economically viable for the streaming platforms, they need to make sure that they economize as much as possible on the data that they transfer. And so these movies have been highly compressed. It says 4K, but there's so much compression happening that, especially when it comes to colors. If you look at a blue sky, for instance, a blue sky has thousands of different hues. But if there's too much compression, you see the banding. So you see this dark blue, less dark, and you clearly see the demarcation between the hues, which wasn't in the original movie. This is one of the things that you won't have with 4K, with Blu-ray, because there's so much more data available to your DVD player, or to your Blu-ray player. So this is why I'm so happy that I finally have those 4K copies. And of course, the the space, the room there is for data on those discs also benefits the audio. So apparently the mix has also been redone in Dolby Atmos. And I do have one of those sound bars that is able to project the sound in multiple directions, and it feels very immersive. So I can't wait to do a rewatch of both these trilogies and to immerse myself again in this world that I love so much. And with that, it is time to wrap up this episode. Of course, I will record a little bit more for my patrons. They have access to the premium version of The Break also in this new year, which means you get twice the content. And the only thing I ask is that you join the first tier, which is $250 per month. $250 more or less. And so, divide that by four episodes. It's 70-80 cents per podcast episode, and you help me to continue this work. So hopefully some of you might want to join that lowest tier, and then in return, as a thank you, I give you these longer versions of the show. And it's a lot of fun because there's still a lot that I'm going to share. I'm going to talk about my reading plans for 2024. I will share a wonderful recipe of pasta con le sarde. It's so good. It's from Sicily, and I will tell you my secret recipe. And we'll talk about some of my plans to upgrade my PC and why I want to do that. All that and more coming up for my patrons. But if you just want to stick with the public show and you're happy with this, thank you so much for the privilege of your time. We'll talk next week. And again, reminder, if you want to get my daily updates, go to my Patreon page and join the community for free. God bless. All right, so that's the public part. Now I'm going to add the book section. So what you're about to see now is the premium part of the show that, unless you're watching this live, you only have access to if you become a patron. So here we go.
Why are you wearing glasses?
Reading.
Reading? Mm-hmm. I didn't know you could read.
It's time to talk about my reading plans for 2024. And I think in the New Year's episode of The Break, I was talking about how excited I was to have completed my extremely ambitious goal of reading 150 books in 2023, but also the downsides of having such an ambitious reading goal. One of the issues that I had was because I had to read 2 or 3 books per week, I didn't allow myself to read longer books. And there are a number of huge trilogies and sometimes quadrilogies or, sometimes a series of 6 books. And I want to read some of those epic series. But in order to be able to do that, I have to limit the number of books that I put on my to read list for 2024. So initially I thought, well, you know what? I'll just read 50 books. So basically, give myself 1 week to read, for instance, another part in the Wheel of Time trilogy. Those books are trilogy. It's like 15 books. But or Brandon Sanderson, The Way of the Kings. That's been on my list for 2 years now. But those books are like 700, 800 pages. So I need a week to finish those. There's just no room in my schedule to read 2 or 3 of those books in 1 week. So I thought, okay, I'll do 50 books. So I first started a new reading goal on Goodreads for 50 books. And then I told myself, well, you know what? But I'm also reading a lot of like marketing books and nonfiction. I will continue to study more, theology and biblical theology. But that's not going to be the main course of my reading. I always read those books, but it's like in between. It's like a snack. Sounds a bit weird because those books are usually also between 200 and 300 pages, but they feel like something. I read those in a few hours, So I decided to, in addition to reading the big books this year, I also want to have some room in my reading goals for the smaller stuff. And so I decided to go from 50 to 100 books. So the new goal for 2024 is to read 100 books, which basically comes down to reading one big book and then a smaller study book. So a lot of those smaller books are going to be nonfiction, or it may be a book that someone recommends, like a Star Wars novel or something like that. It's not doesn't require a lot of energy to read a Star Wars book, so I'll just use those as an aside. So what are the big series that I have planned for this year? Well, I just list these in random order. I'm not sure that's going to be the reading order, but one decision I've already made. In January, I'm going to finish reading the Red Rising series. So right now there are 6 books that are available in the Red Rising saga. I've read the first 3 that form a nice, unified trilogy. If you just want to read those 3 books, it gives a very satisfying conclusion, and you can leave it at that. But there are 3 more books, and I want to read those as well, just because I enjoy the writing style of Piers Brown. I think these books read like movies. It is science fiction. It's young adult. It's like dystopian future fantasy. That's all the stuff that I like. And I really also love the character work. There's a lot of action. It's just, these books do a lot of things very well. So on my list for this month, Iron Gold, Dark Age, and Lightbringer. I think there is another book that's going to appear after that, but if I'm done with these 3 books, then I think I'm done with Red Rising for 2024. Then Wheel of Time, that's the biggest one. I'm going to give myself at least 3 months, maybe even more, to finish that series. I've only read 4 books right now. So it means I've got like 10 or 11 books to read through. And I know that the middle part is going to be the hardest, because those books tend to be very slow and uneven in quality. But I know that it's worth it, because the final few books that have been written by Brandon Sanderson when Jordan died are really, really good, and it's a very satisfying ending of the entire saga. I tremendously enjoyed the television series based on the books on Amazon Prime, and I feel like I've got a much better grip on the world building of Wheel of Time. So this year is going to be the year of Wheel of Time. I want to finish that entire saga. But it's gonna be a major effort. It's like training for a marathon, which can take 3 months. This Wheel of Time feels like my literary marathon of 2024. Then another series I really want to read is written by Fonda Lee, and it's the Jade City trilogy. This is about a future version of Japan, and it's a mix of martial arts, a bit of Blade Runner, there is mystery, there is crime solving, and these books are almost always reviewed in a very positive way by people that I really like for their taste in books. So I know that I'm going to like these books, and I want to read them, starting with Jade City. Then, Le Bardugo, the Shadow and Bone trilogy. This was turned into a series on Netflix, which I found utterly confusing, because there were so many characters, and they not only based the series on the books, on the first books, so the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but they also mixed in some of the stuff from Six of Crows. For the fans of the series, and that already had, were familiar with the world and with the characters in all those 6 books, they felt at ease. I felt completely, lost. I had read the first book. I really liked it. And I expected the television series to just reflect that book, and then there was so much happening that I just like, where are these people coming from, and what is going on? And it wasn't a good experience. But I know that I like the books, and the fans have told me to just start with the books and then go back to the television series. You will enjoy it. To my chagrin, they decided to cancel the series after season 2. So there is a season 2, but that's the end of it, at least for now, unless, some other party will buy the rights, and I don't know. We'll see. But I'm always glad that there is a television series, because it helps me to visualize the world. I like that. This is one of the things that makes it so hard for me to read the High Republic Star Wars series right now, because I don't have a visual anchor for that world. But for Shadow and Bone, there is a series, so I'm going to read at least a Shadow and Bone trilogy, maybe Six of Crows if I like it enough. Then, this is also a big one, and this is probably for a little bit further down the road. I really want to read the first few books of the Stormlight Archive. Yes, it is the masterpiece of Brandon Sanderson's writing. I have read the first 3 books of the Mistborn saga. I might actually also read a few more of the other Mistborn books. I bought a couple of them, not all of them, but so I might also continue Mistborn. But the Stormlight Archive, almost any fan of Brandon Sanderson has told me, either personally or in a video that I saw, is like, this is his masterpiece. This is such a great series. If you like Mistborn, you'll love the Stormlight Archive. And the first book is called The Way of the Kings. These books are super chunky, so that's going to be another one that I feel like I need to warm up for those books. I need to first read. Maybe I'll just start with The Red Rising. I might go to Jade City, and then a little bit further down the road, I will attack the Stormlight Archive. So that is what I have on my list right now. I deliberately want to keep it open because I don't know, especially how much time the Wheel of Time is going to take. Maybe that will fill up the rest of the year. Who knows? But this is what I have on my list. And if you have any suggestions, if anything is missing that you feel I should read and would probably enjoy, I'm thinking, another thing is The Expanse. A lot of people tell me, you have to read The Expanse. You love science fiction. But I'm thinking, I haven't seen the television show yet, so maybe I'll just watch the TV show and then read the books or stuff like that. If you have suggestions, let me know by all means. Let's press the next button. I don't know what it is. Oh, that was the one. This one. Yeah, there we go.
I need help.
You need a teacher. I can't teach you.
Maybe the internet has the information I need.
You know what I learned from the internet?
I understand that you learned a few new things.
There really is so much to learn.
All right, this is everything I learned or discovered on the internet this first week of 2024. And let's start with a new recipe. You know that in my cooking endeavors, TikTok is my biggest source of inspiration because these videos show you in 2 or 3 minutes how to cook an entire meal. And it is working so well for my ADHD brain because I see it's done in 3 minutes. I see how it's done. The visual aspect is very important. I have a lot of recipe books. I never read them because I have to read and it just feels complicated. If I see someone cooking it, I think I can do that. So I saw this recipe for pasta con le sarde. And I was actually looking for a recipe to make pasta with mussels. And I think I mentioned this in the previous episode of The Break. That was a really good experiment. I love the combination of the seafood and the pasta. And then I saw this other related recipe, which comes from Sicily. And it's pasta with sardines, hence the name pasta con le sarde. Le sarde are the sardines. And I was intrigued because it has a number of ingredients that I don't think I've ever put into pasta. And I had to Google this because I've seen the video, but now I don't remember what the various steps in the recipe itself. What I do know is that you need spaghetti or something similar, like these long strands of pasta, fennel seeds, and sardines and anchovies. That makes it even stronger in taste. This is one of those pasta dishes that doesn't need cheese. So it's also a little bit cheaper because cheese is expensive. So instead you can use breadcrumbs because this also can be put in the oven to make a little bit of a crust on it. So you a few of the steps, you have to use raisins, and you steep them in wine. That rehydrates them and also gives them this kind of like interesting taste. You can use saffron, although the TikTok recipe didn't show it, and that was a recipe by an Italian Sicilian cook. So I don't know about that. The recipe that I'm reading right now is from an English or an American website. You can use diced fennel bulbs or fennel seeds. I really like the taste of fennel, but I would never think of putting that in a pasta. And then it also needs seasoned breadcrumbs, where you put the breadcrumbs in some olive oil, some pepper and salt, maybe some garlic in it. And that makes these really nice, crunchy breadcrumbs that you put on top instead of cheese. So the rest is just, I'm not going to repeat the whole recipe, but it is really good. And it's just one of these things that you would order in a restaurant in Rome and pay a lot of money for it, whereas actually the ingredients are very cheap. Sardines is kind of the most cheapest fish that you can buy, but it has a very strong flavor. I always wonder what do I do with sardines? And I sometimes just put them on bread, but it's kind of boring. If you put them in a salad, it always becomes a bit too strong in taste. But if you put it in pasta, it works so well. It's just like anchovies. I've got some recipes from the south of Italy also for, like fish-based pasta, and anchovies and tomato sauce works really, really well. So I am going to make this week, and I'll let you know on social media of what my experience is of the recipe. But I wanted to pass it on so maybe you can try it as well. And let's talk about video games. The other week I was talking about the Return to Moria video game. I ended up buying it, and I wasn't the only one. Inge and Michiel also bought a copy, and we can play together. And that is actually what makes this game work really well. The story is that you are part of Gimli's company, and you are, after the ring has been destroyed, the dwarves from all over Middle Earth gather in around the mines of Moria, and they want to regain the mines. There's still lots of orcs and other nasty creatures living inside the mines of Moria. You remember how dirty everything looked and how abandoned those mines have been, and so the dwarves go back into the mines of Moria to reclaim them, to rebuild them, and the game is based on that. So you venture into the depths of Moria, and you go from area to area, and in the meantime, while you are gathering resources and you're battling with the orcs and other creatures that are still lurking in the darkness there, you are slowly progressing through the mines of Moria. And you can build stuff. It's not Valheim type of building. There are lots of games that do the building aspect a lot better, but it's still fun to, you find like an abandoned house in the mines, and then you kind of rebuild the walls and you make some outer defenses. What I personally love about this game is that it's this kind of comforting type of gameplay where you just gather stuff, you build stuff, and there's no pressure. There's no like story that pushes you forward. You can take your time. And what I like personally, after a long day of hard work, I just like to sit down and just do the mundane stuff. Like, okay, let's go mine some charcoal or some iron ore. Let's go build something. Let's clean up. Like the other day, I spent literally 2 hours lighting the mines of Moria. So it's very dark. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to put torches everywhere. So I first had to gather the material, and then I placed so many torches that the entire place looked like a Christmas town. And I was so happy. And that was the only thing that I did. I did have to slay some wolves and some orcs. But I was so happy at the end of the evenings, like, oh my gosh, the mines of Moria look like a Christmas village. I'm so happy. And that's the kind of gameplay that I love to do. And when you are playing this game together with other people, you can, of course, make much more progress. It's easier to solve some of the puzzles, and especially if you're attacked, when the enemies become stronger and stronger, the more you go deeper into the mines. it's also a more fun to just defeat these enemies if you are with several people. Otherwise, it gets a little bit tedious, especially when you have waves and waves of orcs. It just takes sometimes like 15, 20 minutes to get through a wave like that and survive, and then you can go back to gathering resources. If you are with several people, it becomes much more balanced in terms of gameplay. So I'm really enjoying that game. Very happy that I bought it with some, like there was a voucher that you could get on the Epic Games Store. And then the game itself is still on sale, I think. So I think I paid like 14 euros for a game that has already, filled a lot of my evenings with a lot of fun. Anyway, great game. Return to Moria. And then finally, speaking of games, there is this one game that I keep hearing about, and it makes me so eager to experience it. It is this RPG that you can play in VR. Many people call it, this is the best VR game ever created. I don't even know exactly what it's called. But it is, you get it for free if you buy the new Quest 3. And I mentioned last week, I think, that I was still debating whether this would be something that I wanted to buy or not, because, as you know, Apple will bring their Vision Pro to the market very soon, and I believe that Apple is going to win this whole technology. That they have the most amazing standards. However, I'm not going to hold out because it will probably take 3 or 4 years. I was listening to one of those Twitch shows where they predicted that it would still take many years before this technology, first of all, would be perfected. Because right now, the Apple Vision Pro, it's bulky, it's big, it's also fragile because the entire thing is glass, and it is $3,500. And that's probably without VAT. So it's just insanely expensive. They're only going to make a very limited amount. So I don't know if this is if this is something I am going to able to buy. But why not in the meantime just go to the Meta Quest 3 so that I can at least continue my journey in VR. I don't know. I love the Quest, the original Quest that I have, but it's very limited. It's not very fast, and there was just no way that I could hook it up to my PC because my PC is also several years old. I think it's 5-6 years old, so it cannot generate the graphical quality that is required to be able to play VR games. So now I'm thinking, well, if I get the entry level Quest 3, then I could play this. I think it's called Asgard's Wrath or something like that. I'm not sure. There's this one. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Oh yeah, Asgard's Wrath 2. That is the game. And it's got 100 hours of gameplay, which is insane. Let me play the launch trailer here. I hope it's going to play. Let's listen. Okay, it might help if I reroute the audio to the Rodecaster. So here we go, and then let's take a look.
The gods take everything from mortals.
And I have to say, the in-game graphics look pretty good.
Lands dry.
Deny spirits their rightful passage.
Turn worlds to ash. You allowed Loki to deceive you.
Now his chaos reigns.
The universe demands a guardian. And with each possession, You will grow stronger.
Oh, dutiful guardian, here to right your wrongs.
As you can tell, there's a lot of fighting and slashing enemies. It looks good. I would say it resembles World of Warcraft in, visual style, colors. But of course, it's in 3D. So it's not my favorite style. Because I've never been a fan of World of Warcraft. I like the gameplay, but I don't like the graphical style. But I think the whole difference is going to be able to play something like this in 3D. So that would be a standalone game that I know is going to deliver 100+ hours of entertainment. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe it's worth, if I'm going to invest in a Quest 3, to also invest in upgrading the PC so that it can run the Steam VR, because I do own a lot of games that you can play in 3D. The one thing that actually is pushing me to considering this for real is that I read that there is this app that has just launched, I think, and that enables you to play almost any game that is created in 3D with using modern gaming engines can be converted into a VR experience. That would immediately give access to, especially if you use a computer to generate the data for your Quest, it would basically make it possible to play to be inside so many of the games that I already own. And that for me is also important. I don't want to invest like 60, 70 euros every time I want to play a new game. So if I can play my existing library using the Quest 3, then that changes the equation. So that's what I'm currently thinking of. If any of you has a Quest 3 and wants to share the experience, both the upsides and maybe also the downsides, then of course let me know. I'd love to hear some first person experiences. That wraps it up for this episode of The Break. The next one is going to be live on Wednesday. So keep an eye on the emails that you get if you are subscribed to the Patreon community, because I will communicate the time and also the topic. So what I want to do is when I write about certain topics in my daily newsletter, I also want to take those topics and talk about them during the live show. And since I hope that because it's going to be on the same day, same time every week, it will be possible to get a larger audience, and then we'll have more fun. We can talk about these topics a bit more in depth. So that's my current strategy that I'm contemplating. I hope it's going to be what people enjoy, and if not, then we'll tweak it. But so far, I'm super excited. And final thing, if you know of people, or maybe you yourself are interested in becoming a coaching client for my help when it comes to sharing your message on social media, send me a message. I'll get in touch with you and I'll tell you more. Take care and talk to you soon. I need to come up with a way to stabilize the phone, because every time I touch the table or I type something in, like the entire screen is gonna wobble all around. I like the fact that the image that you see is actually my iPhone. It's using the quality cameras of the iPhone, and that also allows me to make the background blurry. In fact, that's all a digital effect. I can make it even blurrier. I can go to portrait, and then I can look how blurry this can get. Look at this. Look at this. This for me doesn't work anymore. It's too blurry. It's too artificial. So I usually use just a tiny bit of out of focus background to create a bit more depth. I also increase the depth of the image because I'm like, I can touch the back here. I'm very close to the background, so normally this would all be in focus. I'm also creating a little bit more depth because I have this blue light that's right outside your field of view, and it's shining on the back of the bookshelves, gives it a bit different color. I have a lamp here. It's one of those Elgato key lights that shines on my face here, and I have. Oh, it's not even on. Let me turn that on, and you'll see the difference. I have what they call a rim light, and that will create even more depth. So now it's on, and you see that there's this rim, like this edge that is lit, and this is because there is a very strong light there in the corner. Maybe it's even a bit too strong, because if I take off my headset, it's like this is almost overblown. But anyway, I'm very happy with this setup. It took me 2 years to finally get to the point where I feel like, well, this looks actually really good. So I don't have to worry about that anymore. Let's go to the comments and see. I was unable to do any moderation, so hopefully things didn't go wrong. So we did have some spam there at the beginning of the chat, but you can just ignore that. I assume that you recognize the spam for what it is. We've got Tony Sohu. Is that how you pronounce it? We've got Michiel as well. Steve also. Yes, Stephen King's On Writing is a great book with lots of great advice. It's more about writing novels and writing fiction. So I'm currently reading a lot of books about copywriting. So it's writing for the internet, writing for emails. And I want to get to the point where everything I write evokes a feeling, an emotion, and a reaction of my audience. And that's hard. Some of the articles that I wrote, for instance, about Rebel Moon, got a lot of feedback, and there was a lot of discussion happening. And then the other day I wrote what I thought was a very interesting article about the similarities between the story of the Magi and the first book of Harry Potter. Crickets. Like it didn't work. And so for me, that's, instead of rewriting this or feeling guilty about why did I write that, I use this as input. Like, okay, obviously it was too long. Maybe the topic, Harry Potter, people are not much into Harry Potter nowadays. And it was more of a meditation. It wasn't really opinionated, or it was a bit too pious, maybe. So although I did write that other article about Galadriel and how the character of Galadriel was inspired by the Virgin Mary, and that got a lot of engagement and a lot of reposts. And that was also a pretty pious Catholic article. So it's still trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. But the best way for me to improve my writing is just by doing this, and to do it on a daily basis. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to take these stories that I write, I'm going to put them in an app like Scrivener, and I'm going to do redaction of those texts after I've seen their impact, so I can improve upon them. And then I can bundle that and publish that as a book. So this is how I hope to also gather enough material for a sequel to Geek Priest, which is the book that I wrote more than 10 years ago. Because the topic is still the same, using modern culture and then connect it with deeper layers. Anyway, who else is there in the chat? Oh, we've got Julien of Paris, who's also there. Also, best wishes for your project in 2024. Julien is the writer-director of a Star Wars fan movie that is in development. Paul is here from Texas. Happy New Year, too. You read my book. Okay, wow. Okay, well, then I hope you are subscribed to my mailing list, because the articles that I send you on a daily basis are going to be the basis of the sequel to Geek Priest. But thank you for the feedback. I'm glad to hear that it still works, because I don't even remember what the book is about. It's such a long time ago. So much has happened in the meantime. Happy Trailer Reactor is there too. Awesome. get new skills. I assume this is a reaction to the plans about writing and stuff that I shared. Michiel doesn't want to do a reading challenge this year. Want to focus on reading more, but enjoying it. Yeah, if it becomes a chore, it's no longer fun. So for me, having an ADHD brain, I need that challenge. The challenge is what keeps me engaged. But I can totally imagine that for someone else, it would be off-putting to have such a, high target for books. The most important thing is that you enjoy reading, and the more you enjoy it, the more you will read. Paul asks, have you read Terry Pratchett's Discworld, satire fantasy? I tried to read Discworld, and I couldn't get into it for some reason. And I only tried a little bit. So I read like 2 books of Discworld, and I was like, I can see that some people like this style. It's just not for me. I don't know why. It's just, it doesn't feel, it's a bit inconsequential, and the humor is just not my style. I don't know. It's a bit strange, and maybe I haven't invested enough in it but when I try several times and it still doesn't work for me, I put it away. I was like, okay, let's focus on the books that I know work for me, for what I love. But I know that Pratchett has a lot of fans. I'm just not one of them. The Darth Plagueis book is great. Yeah, I hear a lot about that. It is legend, though. I don't think it's canon anymore, as far as I know. But yeah, people keep telling me that it's a good read. Sardines on toasted sourdough bread is lovely. Yeah. I mean, that's what I used to do. It's like just combine it with bread, but it's a little bit boring. So that's why I like this pasta recipe. Justin says, shared. Maybe you shared the stream or something. I don't know. But if you need moderation, don't hesitate. In any case, thank you. I do have Michiel who's doing some of them. He's able to moderate if possible, but I can't do Facebook moderation. But Facebook usually is fine because I only have people that I know that follow me. On YouTube, it sometimes gets out of hand. But thank you so much for the offer. All right, I'm going to continue enjoying my Sunday. I'm glad I got this out of the way. So I'll get this online, and then we're finally back on schedule. So next appointment is going to be live on Wednesday. I'll let you know at what time. It probably will be in my afternoon, so it would be morning in North America. So we'll see if that works. And now I'm going to play Baldur's Gate. Yes. Talk to you later.